I just used to hate it. I would get so awkward. Even at like, if I was out for dinner with my family, I didn't like it when my mum was asking the waiter for the gluten-free menu. Like, I just hated making a fuss, even though it's not making a fuss. I think it's 85% of my online PT clients are celiacs. I actually never set out to talk about celiac disease. I'd made a recipe and used gluten-free flour. Someone asked why I used gluten-free flour. I said that I was celiac, and it just like blew up, and everyone's like, I'm celiac. Running was the thing I always enjoyed. It's the thing I've always been consistent with, even during that period of my early 20s of going out and not looking after myself, I would still always run.
My name's Annabel. I am on Instagram known as the Gluten-Free PT or Annabel Active. So I'm a personal trainer, an online coach, but also I've got celiac disease and have had it since I was 9 years old. So that's kind of what I spend most of my life talking about, having celiac disease. It seems to be my entire personality. And yeah, what else do you want to know? I'm 30 and thriving-ish.
I think that works. Yeah, 30 is thriving. That works, doesn't it?
We'll go with it.
We'll go with it. I want to start on the celiac disease because a lot of people might not know what celiac disease is. Just explain what exactly celiac disease is, and then we're going to get into, in the future, how that's kind of affected your life, your training, your running as well.
So celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, which is obviously where your body attacks itself. And there is no cure for celiac disease. So the only way to manage it is by eating a gluten-free diet. And if someone has celiac disease and eats gluten, your gut is attacking itself. And doesn't absorb any nutrients. So if you have undiagnosed celiac disease, a lot of people have all sorts of health complications, and it often gets misdiagnosed for so many things like IBS or, I don't know, just so many different things. It can be quite hard to diagnose at times. But I found out kind of by accident. I had like an accidental diagnosis when I was younger. Some people do get diagnosed straight away, but yeah, there's no cure. It's not like you can take a tablet for it or anything. You just have to eat a gluten-free diet. And by saying eating gluten-free, that even means you can't even have a crumb, or you can't have your toast in the same toaster as someone. Like, it's really, it's really serious, but it's one of those ones that's kind of, I think a lot of people don't understand the severity of it because there isn't a cure, or there isn't like a magic pill you can take for it. Yeah.
When did you find out you had celiac disease, and how you said it was the kind of like an accidental diagnosis? Why? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I was 9, and I basically came home from school one day and was like, Mum, I've got a weird lump in my neck, which obviously is quite concerning. I now realise that I'm older. So I had blood tests. My mum took to the doctors, and turned out that was just a gland from being ill or something. But off the back of a blood test, they found out I was anemic and had pretty much 0 iron in my body. Which is a symptom of celiac disease, being anemic. So they said to my mum, it could be this thing called celiac disease. And obviously this is like over 20 years ago. So like a lot of things, it just, we didn't have social media, things weren't spoken about as much. So my mum was like, what on earth is celiac disease? And then I had further tests, including an endoscopy, where they put like a camera down your throat and look inside and whatever. And yeah, they basically saw there's this thing inside, like, I think it's in your gut. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a doctor, but they're called villi. And so they're meant to be like up and down, but mine were completely flat because basically my body just was not absorbing any nutrients. And they straight away were like, yeah, she's got celiac disease. So that was kind of how it came about. It wasn't like I had crippling stomach pain or was walking around really ill, like none of that. I was really small as a child. Like, I didn't grow at the same pace as my friends, but I don't know, again, wasn't too much of a cause for concern. And otherwise, I didn't really have any other major symptoms. Or not that I remember, and not that my parents have ever said either.
Obviously, it's quite I can't remember what I was doing when I was 9. I'll be totally honest. But can you remember that time? Like, was it a bit weird? Like, you can't eat these foods anymore type thing? Can you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember bits. Like, I remember sitting down and getting told I had this thing. And the doctor basically just listing off the food I couldn't eat. And obviously being 9 years old and having a medical professional being like, you can't eat biscuits, cakes, bread, pizza.
Oh.
What on earth will I eat? Vegetables. I remember that. And I do remember like little bits as well, obviously. But yeah, I think being 9, I don't know. I don't remember loads of it now. But there are pivotal moments like going to friends' birthday parties or going out to restaurants. And I do remember struggling in those scenarios.
Are you always strict on yourself or not?
I was when I was like first diagnosed, I guess, because I'm still a child and I was like very much, under my parents' care. So at home, everything was gluten-free. And if we went out for food, my mum would like take food with us and ask the restaurant to cook it and all of it, because you didn't get gluten-free menus. Like gluten-free food was not as accessible as it is now. The only places you could get it was on prescription, and it was like the absolute basic minimum. And restaurants it wasn't really a thing. But then as I got older and when I kind of became a teenager and I would start going out with my friends, and I just, didn't want to be different, wanted to fit in. So I would eat pizza or, I would eat gluten, which I would just like to add a disclaimer. You absolutely should not do, being celiac. And I do not recommend it to anyone. But I think, all teenagers are the same. You want to just fit in with your friends. You want to be cool. If you're going on a date with a boy for the first time, I didn't want to start being like, oh, excuse me, waiter, can I have a separate menu? Like, you just kind of want to fit in. So during that period of my life, I definitely kind of rebelled against it for sure.
Was there a point where you were like, look, like this is daft. I shouldn't be doing this. I need to be taking this more seriously. Was there like a seesaw moment, or was it just something that kind of gradually happened?
I think it did kind of gradually happen. I mean, don't get me wrong, throughout all of those teenage years, I would have so many arguments with my parents, or, my mum being like, do you not understand? Classic teenage arguments. And then I think when I moved to London when I was 18, 19, and started working, and again, the same thing, wanted to fit in, living this London lifestyle. And I think I kind of reached a point in my early 20s when I was like, actually, I'm really quite unhealthy. Like, I'm living a really unhealthy lifestyle. Regardless of going out and drinking, I was like, I'm eating gluten. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. So I think that was probably the major turning point. And then I think off the back of that, just how big social media came over those years, and I would like read more things. And, I think being diagnosed when I was 9, it was very much, you have celiac disease, don't eat gluten. And I kind of didn't really talk to anyone else about all those other bits that come with it. And so then I would start, following people on social media and reading about, oh, this happens when they eat gluten, or all these different things. So I think that helped me kind of wake up as well. And I think that's what drives me to have my platform now, in case there's anyone in my position that's feeling how I used to feel. So yeah.
It's quite cool now, like that's part of your story, right? The fact that kind of became more prominent on social, became more prominent in general. And now you're the person that maybe for a lot of people come across your account and maybe start to understand it a little bit more in people that are, young and active. Like that's got to feel quite rewarding to you, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And I think, I don't have a huge following, but the amount of DMs I get daily from people with celiac disease asking me questions, saying that my platform helps them, or just all the kind of questions that a medical professional might not tell you, little things like, oh, what do you do when you go on a date for the first time? Or what do you say about this? And that does make me really happy. Like, I really love that part. I say my job, it's not really my job. I don't see it as my job, but I love that I have that element to what I do where I can help people with those bits, because you don't always know the answers to those things when you're diagnosed with something like celiac disease.
And the medical professional bit to it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because I'm sure there are medical professionals with celiac disease. However, I think a lot of the time, unless you live something, then it's really kind of hard to relate. So I think when somebody sees a person like yourself, whether it be through a screen or in real life, there's that relatability, isn't there? And I think that connection maybe a little bit more.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's just, people might see a video I've posted on TikTok and think, oh, that's the same as me. I often get people be like, oh, I'm a marathon runner as well. And what do you eat before a race? I'm a celiac too. Like little things like that. It's just having, that one thing, like you said, people think they've got a connection and they can relate to you.
In terms of obviously the food side of things and the gluten-free side of things, I think that's probably the thing that people know the most about celiac disease, right? That's what they kind of presume, and they can be like, right, so you're celiac, you need to eat gluten-free. What are the other aspects of your life that you have to kind of pay attention to? Are there things that if you did continue to eat gluten could become a factor? Like what are the other things other than just the kind of gluten-free element of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a big one is osteoporosis. and bone density. So that's why, well, one, that's a reason I got into what I do. Obviously, lifting weights and being active is going to help with strong bones, but being celiac, you are more prone to osteoporosis, which is basically weak bones, crumbling bones. And alongside that, I mean, I don't want to scare anyone off, but I'm sure people with celiac disease know the long-term effects. But if I continue to eat gluten, you can end up with things like cancer or infertility, and quite serious things. And I think, again, when you're 9 and you get told these words, you don't really know what they are. And also, there's so much, I've read so many articles on the links, obviously, between gut health and mental health, and there's the whole mental side of celiac disease as well. And I think that's something I'm really quite passionate about now. I think, you don't realize with any condition, if you're diagnosed with any kind of illness or disease or whatever it is, there's always going to be a mental impact. And I speak to so many people, and from my own experiences, struggles with body image, relationship with food, like social anxiety, being put in, I don't know, if you're in the workplace and there's a team lunch, or there's so many different parts of it. So I think definitely the mental side of things is a big part that I've had to figure out along the way as well.
I guess it's that feeling as well, isn't it? Like, we all know that feeling where you don't want to put yourself in an awkward situation. And I would imagine that's the feeling that you've had over the years almost, where you're like, I can't be bothered to say this in this situation, whether it be on a date or be at a work lunch. Like, how does that make you feel? Maybe how did it make you feel? And how do you kind of go about that now?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I'm so excited, 80 years old. Back in the day, I just used to hate it. I would get so awkward, even at if I was out for dinner with my family. I didn't like it when my mum was asking the waiter for the gluten-free menu. Like, I just hated making a fuss, even though it's not making a fuss. And same in a work environment. I used to work a corporate job, so there'd often be lunches and people's birthday things and things like that, and I just wouldn't say anything. So either you don't say anything and you don't eat, and when people are like, oh, why aren't you eating? Or you say something, and even though now I'm out of that, it's not an issue. Like, why does it matter if you have celiac disease? Why does it matter if you're eating something different? But I think it can be really, really hard to kind of get to grips with it. And but now, I mean, I literally have the gluten-free PT in my bio on Instagram. So now I don't worry about it at all. And anywhere I go, I'm just like, I'm gluten-free. What's the celiac menu? But I've had celiac disease for 21 years, so that definitely didn't happen overnight, for sure.
When did running first enter the chat then? When did that first become a thing in your life? Because obviously, as you said, you've got the gluten-free PT in your bio, and that's a huge part of your life. But when did specifically running become a thing?
Running became a thing when I was quite young. So I was on the cross country team. When I was 12. So I've always, running was the thing I always enjoyed. And it was it's the thing I've always been consistent with, even during that period of my early 20s of going out and not looking after myself. Even if I wasn't a member of a gym at those times, I would still always run. Like, it's just the thing I've always had there. So it's always been a thing. I think I ran it came up on my memories on my phone the other day. My first half marathon I did was 2015. And then kind of since then, I've just, always kind of kept it up. And I would say more so consistently in 2023, I picked it back up and started taking it really seriously and consistently, and doing more marathons and going to run clubs and things like that. So it's always been a thing.
In terms of performance then, it's interesting how we've spoken about maybe when you weren't as strict on your gluten-free diet and to where you are now. Has there been a differing level of performance? Have you noticed a difference in your body when you've been looking after yourself more?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like I said earlier, that there's so much to it, and it's understanding, having an autoimmune condition, everyone's different. And especially with celiac disease, people have different kind of responses and reactions. So, for example, if I ate some gluten right now, I wouldn't start throwing up on the camera. I actually would be okay, which sounds ridiculous, but obviously it's all the internal damage and the long-lasting damage. Whereas someone else might eat some gluten and they're bedbound for 2 weeks. And I think I've realized over the years that actually, whilst I might not be being sick, if I eat gluten, I feel really sluggish. I have no energy. I have brain fog, and obviously that impacts my performance massively. And also it affects your appetite. And then if you're not eating enough, you've not got enough energy to run, and all those kind of things do come into it. So yeah, over especially the last kind of couple of years where I've like been a lot more consistent with running and kind of taken my training to the next another level, I think I've definitely noticed the difference by, fueling correctly and at the right times and sleeping more and all of those kind of things.
It feels like you're probably a lot more connected to your body and how you feel than the normal person, right? And that's probably because of celiac disease and because of how you've kind of felt over the years. Like even just hearing you speak then about kind of the differing times in your life and your kind of training, I don't think everybody has that connection with their body and the understanding of their body. And I think probably celiac disease has forced you to do that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. It definitely has. And I think that whole thing has definitely only come about maybe in the last couple of years. I think, I don't know, there's a lot of, we talk a lot more about kind of mental health and those things as well. And I think a couple of years ago, I was really struggling with that, and having had lots of therapy and managing all those kinds of things, it has helped me be a lot more in tune with my body and my mind and how I'm feeling. And to the point where sometimes I'm like, am I being over dramatic here? Like I wake up in the morning, I'm like, how do I feel today? But yeah, you're right. I think especially being celiac, you just are a lot more aware of what feels right and what feels wrong as such.
What's the goal in Rome then? Because we're talking on the 28th of February, which means I think there's 2 weeks? Is it the 16th?
Yeah.
The 16th of March is Rome Marathon. That's the next goal. How's training been going? How's the block been? And I guess we're getting into tapering hell now. So how are you feeling?
We are, thank goodness. Last weekend was my longest and last long run. So I did 32k last weekend, and I'm so happy to now be tapering from here. Well, I've got half marathon tomorrow, but then it's tapering.
It's mad that in marathon training, it's mad that you're like, I'm pretty much tapering. I've got half marathon tomorrow.
I know, it is quite ridiculous, isn't it? But no, training's been good. Like I said to you before when we were chatting earlier, I struggle training in winter. I don't like being cold. I don't like my trainers getting muddy. I know that sounds very high maintenance, but I'm just not a winter runner. So I've definitely struggled, getting up in the dark and just getting it done. But otherwise, it's been good. I had an injury at the end of last year, so I kind of started my training block a little bit later than I would have liked to. But touch wood and fingers crossed, it's been going good. And yeah, I'm hoping to get a PB in Rome, but I don't want to say it out loud because I get it.
I feel like
it's not. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I feel like you've kind of just said it, maybe.
No, I can't say the actual time though, because then I might jinx it.
Okay.
But I know it's not all about PBs. And the last kind of 2 marathons I didn't go for PBs. I just wanted to run them. I think that's something important I've realized along the way. Not every race or run has to be your best, or you kind of do them for different reasons. But this one, I feel like I want to do it to try prove myself that I can get this time. So that's the aim.
And you're not. I feel like I could push you a little bit more here, but I feel like you're also not going to tell me. So I think I'll let you have that one. Have you got like other long-term goals or? With running, is there anything that you'd love to do in the future? Is there other races you'd love to do in the future? Because I guess one thing that we get as quote unquote runners, particularly if you're going away to do races, is you don't just get that feeling of when you get that PB. I'm going to say that when you get that PB, you get that experience of traveling to Rome, right? Going to do a race with all those other amazing people. Are there other experiences like that you like in the future?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is. I think I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners or other females who are a similar age to me can probably relate to this. But I suddenly had this like overwhelming feeling of being like, I'm 30. I feel like I have so much I want to do. I know I'm still young, but there's so many other parts of life that I'm also thinking about. And then I'm like, how am I going to travel the world and run 10 more marathons in this time? But yeah, it will happen if it happens. But there's definitely countries I would love to visit and cities I'd love to go to. And like what you just said, I think that's one of the great things about running, whether it's a marathon or not, is that you can visit these places and get to know a place in a day just by running around it. So there's definitely a few other marathons I'd love to do. I would love to do like a proper ultra marathon. And I say proper, I did so for my 30th birthday last year, I ran 30 miles. So that was 30 miles, like 48 kilometers, I think it was. It was like nearly 50, but I couldn't get it. But I just did that by myself. Well, a few friends joined me along the way, but obviously there was no kind of crowds, there was no incentive, there was no medal at the end. I kind of just did that to prove myself I could do something hard. I don't really know. I was in a bit of a weird headspace. But I would love to do like a proper ultra marathon. That's definitely on the cards at some point.
I think as well, like when you just said then about, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people, a lot of women listening, 30, wanting to do so much, but obviously folks wanting to like kind of look at other aspects of their life as well.
Yeah.
I think now it's like running's always going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like for you, whenever it literally, like it doesn't matter if you need to take a step back for a few years or you go and do something else, or maybe a family is something you want to focus on, or maybe it's a career. Like there's always that sort of ability to take a step back and then go back to it. I think sometimes people are like, I have to do this race and this race and this race and this race, but like what's to say that you couldn't travel to New York when you're 45 and do the
No, exactly. And you're completely right. And I'm sure, you know, I mean, I know lots of people that are parents themselves and like run marathons, and people that have high flying careers and somehow fit marathon training. But I think it's more, like I said earlier, it's that overwhelming feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's all these things I want to do, and when am I going to do them? But I guess that's what a privilege it is to feel like that, you know, and that we can do those things. And there might be a time when we get to travel these places and do these new experiences.
Is it going to be 40 miles for your 40th, 50 miles for your 50th, 60 miles? Is that what's going to happen?
I'm not sure we're going to keep that on as a tradition, no.
What was that like then? Like, how did you feel in that? Because it is very different doing a challenge like that to kind of doing a race just off your own back on a whim, going out the door, being like, I'm going to run 30 miles.
Yeah, it was really strange. Like I said earlier, I was in a bit of a strange headspace. So I'd just come back from living in Australia for a bit, and I knew I wanted to do it in London because that was where I used to live, and I basically mapped out the route to all like my favourite spots. So like my old flat I used to live in, my favourite park. So that whole element of it was really fun. And then I think when I was running it, I just was in this kind of, it was like blinkers on, and I just was thinking about like all the things that had gone on in the last kind of year since I'd left London, and I just was in such a zone. I can't really explain it. It's really bizarre, but it was fine. Like I found the run actually fine. I mean, obviously it's a bit hard, but like I've done harder 5Ks. It's really weird. I can't really explain it. But I did have, like I said, a few friends along the way, and then we finished the run at my favourite gluten-free bakery in London, and we celebrated with gluten-free croissants, and it was just it was really fun.
That's something I love actually about your page and that you've done, because I saw something around Christmas time as well. I'm pretty sure when you said about having a gluten-free crisp, was it around that sort of time with some friends and stuff? And it's like, I think there is still this kind of there is this, I don't know what the right word is, like people still think gluten-free food is rubbish, like, don't they, a lot of the time, and you're like, that is just not the case. My partner's celiac actually, and I've learned so much over me being with her. And when you said about the toaster, I was like, I didn't know about that initially. It was like cross-contaminating the butter, like all stuff like that, little things. And now when I'm in a situation with her and friends and people like that, it's like I'm like picking out all these little things, and I'm being like this. But what it also has made me do is eat a lot more gluten-free food, and it's really good. There's like most of it you can't really tell. There are a few things that I'm like, I can tell, but the pasta's great. Like loads of the stuff's great.
No, exactly. I completely agree. That's not me being biased, but like in my house I grew up, my brother and sister would eat a lot of gluten-free food as well, just because it was easier for my mum to cook everything the same. She wouldn't force them to have gluten-free bread. She wouldn't put them through that. But a lot of it is nice.
It's quite cool that you're kind of sharing that on social, particularly like that element of, you know, being with all your friends, because that is going to break down the anxiety of people that maybe are feeling that social anxiety. Because I feel like that is obviously the health implications of it are the worst thing. But I think the social anxiety, I think people play that down in whatever situation, whether it is something like celiac disease or another thing that's going to cause social anxiety.
Yeah.
That's almost worse sometimes. You say like you don't see the physical, if you were to eat gluten, you wouldn't see physical implications right now. But if you were to go into or back in the day, if you were to go into a social situation, that would make you feel anxious then and there, wouldn't it? And it's that's almost worse sometimes.
100%. No, I completely agree. And I think they were the things, obviously, where I was younger, I didn't talk about those kinds of things to anyone. Like, I don't know, you just don't really, well, I didn't talk about kind of my thoughts when I was a child. But when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, there were so many scenarios where I was so anxious to like, go to a friend's house or, a work lunch or go get asked on a date and things like that. It does play on your mind for sure.
Do you think, like you said a couple of times, like you went through a bit of a tricky time last year and stuff like that. Do you think any of those social situations early doors when you were kind of struggling, do you think that led to like you maybe struggling a little bit in later life as well, or do you think?
I don't know. I do wonder because, as I mentioned at the start, I know there is so many links between gut health and mental health.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a medical professional, but I've read so many things, and I do sometimes wonder. It's strange. I'm not an overly anxious person, as in if I was in a room full of people, I'd happily kind of talk to people and you wouldn't know. But certain things, like what we were saying earlier, being, in a social situation where I had to ask for a gluten-free menu, and like that kind of dealing with that stuff internally and not talking to anyone about it. I look back now and I actually had a lot of like anxiety growing up from that side of things. So I sometimes do wonder, but
we mentioned about your page a couple of times, and we kind of mentioned briefly about like people coming to it and people seeing it, and it kind of being a reflection of maybe how you looked at stuff in the past. But you've obviously got this this niche of being a PT as well and understanding that side of things. Have you had people come to you that maybe haven't understood that maybe lifting weights is a good thing to prevent osteoporosis, or to help if you are celiac, to being active is a good thing? Like, have you had those people come to you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something now, like I think it's 85% of my online PT clients are celiacs.
Oh wow.
Which is crazy. I actually never set out to talk about celiac disease. I think it was one time I mentioned it on a post that I'd made a recipe and used gluten-free flour. Someone asked why I use gluten-free flour. I said that I was celiac, and it just like blew up. And everyone's like, I'm celiac. And then until that day, I didn't know any other celiacs. I'd never met one. I'd never spoken to one. And now I'd love to know the stats of how many of my followers are celiac. But even just having that community with my online coaching clients is lovely, obviously for them, but also for me. Sometimes we end up just talking about, I don't know, the latest gluten-free bread that we tried that was awful, or just like having that common ground. And a lot of people do come, they just don't understand. Either they've had PTs in the past that maybe don't fully understand the gluten-free diets, they don't know how to fuel properly for their training, or, some people, like I said earlier, if they've been glutened, they might struggle with fatigue and feeling tired. And I guess it's having a PT and a coach, like I fully understand how they feel. So I'm not going to start being like, no, you missed your session, you've got to do 100 burpees. I'm going to be like, right, take it easy, get a peppermint tea, we'll pick this up when you're feeling good again. Like, it's just having, again, someone that's relatable, I guess, like what we said at the start.
Dead interesting as well, saying like that kind of chat isn't just for them, it's kind of for you as well. Like, that's got to feel nice that you've built this community almost.
No, it does. It's kind of, it's strange sometimes. Like, I'm like, how did I end up with it? Like, talking about, I never spoke about celiac disease ever. Like, I'm sure I have some friends that I went to school with, and they're like, I didn't even know you had this thing. Now it's like my whole personality, because I never used to tell anyone. And I don't know why. Like, it's almost like I was ashamed to be different. I guess just when you're that age, you just don't want to be different. But now it's nice that we're all in it together.
And I think as well, like the fact that it was something so innocuous, like posting a recipe using GF flour and then everybody jumping on that. I think maybe if you had pushed the agenda. Do you know what I mean? Or if you had outwardly gone out with that and that as a goal, but you didn't at all. You just kind of did that. It came naturally. And I think that probably the way that that's happened means that those connections are stronger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I started my social media page during lockdown, and it was actually a baking page where I didn't even post. I didn't post my face. I was like, I can't have my friends know. And like a lot of us, I think in lockdown we all started new hobbies and whatever.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm going to become a really good baker. And I started posting cakes and recipes and things. And then it was in one of them that I mentioned gluten-free, and I suddenly gained, I hit 5,000 followers in a really short space of time. And I was like, oh. And then I started posting PT content, and then, that was kind of how it evolved. So I never kind of set out to do this. It just kind of happened.
When did it become lifestyle as well? Because obviously you've got your PT side of things, but you do share parts of your life on there as well. Was that a difficult decision, or did it kind of just come naturally?
Yeah, it came naturally, but it was difficult. I would say only in the last 6 months have I posted more of my lifestyle stuff. And I think, I used to post little bits here and there, but I just, when I went through that kind of weird phase with mental health and things like that, I cared so much what people thought about me, and I worried so much about it. And I felt like I had to keep posting, but I didn't really want to show people what I was doing day to day. And then in the last kind of 6 months, I don't know, I guess things have kind of evolved, and maybe I'm in a better headspace, and that it just feels natural now. And I think people like that, people like to see, well, I know I do when I follow people, I like to see what they're up to day to day. And for example, if it's another celiac and then I see that they're out having a coffee, I'm like, oh, what coffee shop is that? Where are they getting that gluten-free brownie from? Or, little things like that. So I've realized I enjoy that content. So hopefully others enjoy watching it as well.
It's probably about building up that connection with the person as well, isn't it? Because we all do it. We all have those people that we follow, and we're excited when they post, and like you say, to see what you're up to, or see what you're doing, or see where you are. And I think with that kind of lifestyle element to it, you get that a little bit more. It is funny how you said it started as a baking page, and now it's kind of transitioned into this PT page, lifestyle page. I know there's still a bit of food on there as well. When you had started that account in lockdown and to where you are now, I bet you would never have thought this would have happened.
No, not at all. And when I even think about, I'm sure all of us, lockdown was 5 years ago now, which
it does not feel like it. It feels like it was 3 days. I don't get it.
It's so strange. And my whole life has completely changed since then, as in personal elements. Yeah. And I've moved house however many times. I've lived in Australia. I've done whatever jobs. And it's just weird that I guess the one thing that I've always had is my social media page. It's kind of grown with me. And I'm not saying, I've not got hundreds of thousands of followers, but I've just got a really nice community. I feel like I've got a really lovely kind of group of people on there that we engage with each other and interact, and it's nice. I don't get many trolls, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's definitely the best thing. We'll finish with this because I think it would be silly not to ask, but if somebody is, just been diagnosed with celiac disease, they're stressing out about it. They don't know what to do. They don't know kind of where to go or what kind of road to take. What would be your kind of main advice to them, I guess?
I think my main advice, and what I say to quite a lot of people, like clients and stuff, is you're not going to just adapt to it overnight. You're not going to suddenly wake up and be like, okay, I've got this nailed. It's going to be fine. It will take time, and you kind of have to be patient with yourself as well. Do your research. There's so many interesting and what's the word I'm looking for? Medical professionals have social media platforms that post such important information. Follow them, reach out to, I don't know, charity pages, or there's forums, things like that, and just kind of speak to other people with celiac disease, because they're the people that are going to help you the most. Obviously, you've got the facts now from your medical professionals. Just use those other people and myself and stuff to get that extra information from them, because it's the only way you're going to kind of learn. And also to find your kind of favorite restaurants, find your favorite foods. Don't be afraid to ask in restaurants if they do gluten-free options, and just kind of tell yourself that it doesn't matter. try not to let the anxiety take over, because you can't help it.